Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome to the GAME. You are entering GO-TEX, Artificial Military Engagement, also known as GAME. It was originally developed and designed to test and train soldiers that GO-TEX supplied the US government. It is now a deadly obstacle course you can brave for cash and prizes. Welcome folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another game review. This time we are reviewing Surviving the Game. The game is an acronym, as you heard in the voiceover at the beginning. Surviving the Game is designed by Dwayne Moore, and the art is done by Adrian Alejo, Ahmed Shafak, Daoud Shahid Kirk, Denise Roos, Dwayne Moore, Joaquin Olafson, and Ronald Risco, and it is being published by DM Double Games. Now, what you see before you is a more or less common deck building setup. What you have over here are all the cards that you can purchase by playing your cards. As with all deck builders, you're going to start with a basic hand. Now, before I get any further into it, if you are less interested in how the game is played and you just want to skip right ahead to my final thoughts, you can do that by going to the timestamp that's on the screen right now. For those of you that are still with us, you're looking at the setup for a single player game. This game is playable from 1 to 4 players. The only difference is in the single player game, you're pretty much just looking to get out with as many points as you possibly can, but really just to get out. Whereas in the 2, 3, 4 player game, you are trying to finish the entire level, the obstacle course, get out with as many points as possible. Whoever has the most points is the actual winner. If you wind up not getting out because you are dead, well, that's a real bummer because you can't win even if you had the most points. Now, briefly, what you're looking at here is you have all of the different cards that can be drafted over here. And I'll explain how that works when I do the quick setup of how it goes. Here we have a countdown marker, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And this is used at the beginning of the game for your training rounds, and I will explain that in a minute as well. Right here, we have our lovely little character standee. That represents where I am. Right now, I am training. And then here, we have the different floors that you are fighting through in the game. You have your first floor cards, second floor, third floor, fourth floor, and your exit. There's something in front of you blocking you to get out. The number of cards in each of these stacks varies based on how many players you are playing. So the way the game works is, like any other deck builder, you are starting with your hand of very basic cards. In this case, you have credits or creds and unarmed combat cards. And what you're going to do to start the game is you're going to be able to train up before you go in. And what you're going to be purchasing when you're training are from these 4 cards here that are in what is called the barracks. And there you can get a first aid kit, which clearly heals you. You can get a mag pistol, which is a gun, you shoot things. You can get a hacking device, which is a cybernetic device, which helps you with certain obstacles or traps that you may come upon. And you can get heightened awareness, which is a biotech, which gives you some damage reduction. And then you can see it also gives you the ability to, if you are attacked as soon as you flip a card over, you can use the guard action to draw a card. The other thing that you're able to purchase at the very beginning of the game is an identity. And there are 3. You can be a cyborg, which is going to cost you 40 creds, but that will give you 90 health. And then it will give you these abilities down here. You can be a soldier, which only costs you 20, but you only get 70 health. And you gain these abilities down here. And you can be a biogene, which, as you can see, gives you 80 health and gives you these abilities down here. And I'll note that there are 3 of each card, and each one does have a male and female side, and they all are different. So that's a fun little bonus right there. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a hand of 5 cards. So I'll shuffle up my starting hand and I will draw my 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's take a look at what I have. I have an unarmed combat, which is good for 10 damage. And I have 3 set of 10 creds, so I have 30 creds, and another unarmed combat. The way the training round works is you actually just go through 5 sets of 5 cards, and you buy whatever you want. These unarmed combats are going to be useless for me to start, so I'm just going to take them and put them over here in my spent pile. And then I have 30 creds with which to make a purchase. So what I want to do to start is I want to get myself an identity. So I'm going to become a soldier. And I'll be this woman because she looks pretty badass. So I spend 20 of my creds, 20, and I'll put that over here. And I now have 10 creds left. And now I could make a purchase if there is any weapon card that costs 20 or less, because I only have 10 creds. Unfortunately, over here, the only weapon I have access to is the mag pistol, which costs 30. This card here will stay out in front of me the whole game, whereas everything that I've played or is still in my hand at the end of the round will get discarded. At this point, if we were playing with more players, they would do the same thing. Then our countdown begins. We're no longer at 5, we are now at 4. And then the same thing. I draw 5 cards, and I go through. This time I have 40 creds. I'll discard that one. And what that will do is that's going to allow me to buy one of these mag pistols. Because remember, I can get them for 10 creds left. So that means each one costs 20. So I'm going to spend all 40, and I'm going to buy 2 guns here. So now I have 2 mag pistols in my deck, and these will go immediately into my discard. And then we count down. Now I've gone through, I've made all of my purchases, and you'll see we have the enter. That means I'll be entering the first floor. Now before I do anything else, all of these cards in the barracks, they go away. You no longer have access to them, nor do you have access to all of the other character IDs. So I will clear all of that away. All right, so now that I've done all of the training, I get to move into the game proper. And that is where you're making your way through these floors, fighting things, killing things, trying to make as much money and victory points as you possibly can. Now you'll see that above the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor, there are other cred cards. And every time you defeat an obstacle on one of these floors, you get to take one of these and they go into your discard pile. You'll see that they're worth victory points at the end of the game, and they are worth a certain amount of credits that you'll be able to use in these 2 armories. Next thing I need to tell you here is this first row is the level 1 armory. As long as you are here in floor 1, you have access to all of these cards. As soon as you get to level 2, you have access to all of the level 2 cards. Once you get up to the higher levels, there is a rule for moving the different cards over, and I do have to apologize, I did make a mistake. These cards here were all supposed to start flipped over, because those are actually random. What we have here are all these ones are cards that you have available to you very early on, whereas these cards are higher level cards. And that'll make a little more sense as we move on. And I do apologize for that error. Now each turn you start out by taking your movement actions. And that means you can move to a different floor. I start here on the first one, or you can encounter an obstacle. And as a soldier, I have 2 movement, and as I already said, 70 health. And I can buy weapon cards for 10 less, and for every additional weapon card I play, I get a bonus. The first weapon card, I gain 10 creds that I get to spend. Second weapon card, I do an extra 10 damage and get another 10 creds. And the third weapon card I play, I get another 10 damage and I get to draw 1 card. But in any event, let's take a look at the hand that I have now. And you'll see I have creds, I have a gun, and a lot more creds. My gun here will do 20 damage. So I'm going to take my first move here and I'm going to flip over the first card. And I have a holographic thug. Now, all I have to do is do 20 damage to it and it will die. However, I will have to discard a creds card when I fight him. If I'm unable to do 20 damage, I will wind up taking 10 damage from him. So I will take my cards here, and looking through, I can do that damage. So I will go ahead and play my 20 damage gun. That will defeat him. That goes up here. And since I did combat, I have to discard a card. Though, do remember I gained an additional 10 credits because I am a soldier. And I'll take this card and just discard it over here. Now I have 40 credits that I can spend. And I can buy 2 things from the armory over here. Or I have the always available med kits over here, which costs 40. I can always go to the healing station and heal myself up for 30 credits. I can buy Kevlar for 50 credits. And there are injury cards because sometimes you get injured, and like any other game, the injury cards clog up your deck. But with my 40 credits, I'm going to go ahead and spend 30 credits and buy myself I will spend all 40 credits and I'll buy myself a nice jetpack. That gives me the ability to fly, which is useful on some traps. And if there's a card that comes up that says Assault, I can discard this card and draw another one. And that goes into my discard pile, as do all the rest of the cards in my hand and that I played. Now, I had one more movement. I could have moved or drawn another card here, but I chose not to because I didn't have any cards left in my hand. Then the next thing I would do is I would draw 5 more cards, and I know what I have coming up. So next turn, I have a lot of unarmed combat, which is not particularly useful to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip this one over, and we have yet another holographic thug, whom I will use 2 unarmed combats to defeat, and I have to discard a creds card. And then that will be the end of my turn because I can't do anything else useful. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of skip ahead a little bit. All right, so I've fast forwarded a bit, and I've claimed some cards out of there and some cred cards from up there. And I will say that if you ever empty a floor, the floor closes. And anyone who's already on that floor, they'll have to, on their next turn, they'll have to move. And it certainly is possible that that will happen. Every time I've played, especially solo, I've actually emptied out the first floor and often the second floor as well as I'm trying to buff myself up a bit. So here I am over here, and I will take my movement and I'll flip over this level 3. And so what you see here is I have an electrical floor. And assault here means that immediately I gain an injury. So I gain one of these cards, goes into my discard, and I have to discard a cybernetic card if I happen to have one. And then the other thing that you'll see here is when it comes time that we're actually dealing with this room and it's got 40 health so I can break the floor, if I have a range ability or flight ability, I'll be able to avoid this damage here. Here we are, so let's take a look at my hand. So I can certainly do the damage. I have plenty of cards here and I can do tons of damage. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my jetpack to give me flight, so I won't take any damage from it. Play that. Then I need to do 40 damage to it, so I'll go ahead and use this flux cannon, which will allow me to do 50 damage, though I'm going to lose 1 movement. And I will go ahead and just use my flux cannon here to take out the electric floor, so that gets played out there. That does mean I get 10 credits. And since I've destroyed this floor gets discarded, and I gain these creds right here, and that goes into my discard. And I decide, you know what, I'm going to push my luck. I'm going to keep going. And so I'm going to flip over the next one. And this time I have a EMP grenade launcher drone. He's going to take 50 damage to kill. He's going to do 10 damage to me, but immediately discard all cybernetic flux and energy cards. Cyborgs receive 10 damage. Splash means it hits everybody, and discard a cybernetic flux or energy card. So first I'll go ahead and I'll take my 10 damage. So I started at 70, so I'm now down to 60, and I have to discard one of those cards. But luckily for me, I don't have any of those, but I will go ahead and discard this one over here. I'm not sure if that stays out or not. Usually you clear all your cards you've played and equipped at the end of the round, but I will discard that one. And then we're going to see if I can do 50 damage. And luckily for me, I have my pistol and I have my flux blade. So as I've said, I've already used one weapon for plus 10 credits. Then I'm using a second weapon here, which will give me another 10 credits and plus 10 damage. That's 40 damage. And I use my pistol here, and I do 50, 60 damage, and I get to draw a card because I am a soldier, and that's another cred. So I now have 40 credits that I can use at the end of the round to make another purchase, which I would buy whatever it is. Now, the only other thing that I want to show you is what happens if, let's just say, I was unable to kill this enemy here. I didn't have enough damage. I couldn't do 50. Well, then it would attack back, and I would take 10 damage. And you play through the game, moving up floors, back floors. You get to see what cards you have first and decide what you think you can take on. Clearly, the higher the floor, the harder the opponent, until you get to the exit, and that's where you have the hardest opponents of all. So here we have this Alpha Cyborg. Alpha just means they're the hardest competition. It's 100 damage to kill it. As soon as it flips over, everybody takes 20 damage, and it'll do 40 damage every turn if you don't kill it. The only other thing to mention is, if you ever use all of your health, you die, you lose, you're out. So, what do I like about this game? First off, it is a deck builder. It clearly operates like every other deck builder that is out there. You start with a really poor deck, and you're building it up with interesting cards, and you're able to kind of customize the kind of player that you are. And this game is no exception. It does that, and it does it well. I also think that it has done a pretty good job of realizing its theme. This futuristic sci-fi kind of Running Man kind of competition where you're slowly progressing through these floors. And it does feel like you're moving through the floors as you get to each one. It's a little bit harder, and as you get a little further, the panels open up on the walls and you have access to better weapons, or however that's supposed to work. And also, each of these identities that you get feels unique. And there's benefits to each one. Some cost more, but you get more health. Some cost more, but maybe you prefer the extra discount on cybernetic cards or biogene cards. I'll also say that the cybernetic cards and the weapons and the biogene cards, they all do feel distinct. They are definitely a different play style, and I think that is key. You really can dive in and make your character the type of character that you want. And at the same time, you can also use stuff that is really specialized for other characters. So it's not like you are locking yourself away from using something because you've picked an identity. I also like these 3 always available. You can just heal. You can get a med kit, which allows you to heal and also gives you the opportunity to destroy cards in your hands, destroying things like injuries, because as I said, those clog up your deck. And I think that is also well done. I like this idea that, yeah, you're drafting cards, but you can draft as many cards as you want. It doesn't really matter. If you're not killing these things, you're not winning, because you have to kill them to get victory points, which are here. Not only do you have to kill them to get the victory points, but that's the only way you're going to get the higher value credit cards, which is how you're going to get the better weapons as you go through this game. And obviously, it's exponentially more valuable as you go up. That's really well done also. The next thing that I'm going to say is, while I have played several deck builders now that have this idea of movement in it, where you are not only building a deck, but you're moving around. The Few and the Cursed is one. Clank is the one that everybody loves and everybody's played. And this is no exception. And again, you're not moving around a board, but you are moving up and down here, and you do have some choice. You do have some agency with what you want to do. But I like that you're not really dependent on your cards to do that. You know you can move 2. You know you can encounter 2 things if you want, always with whatever ID you've purchased. And I think that's really well done. It's really clever. I like the synergies that can be developed with the characters and making you want to stack up on that particular character specialization and the bonuses that you get as you go through. I think that's very cool as well. And I also think that the enemies and obstacles that you're facing are, again, well themed. All these holographic enemies and drones that you might be fighting. I think that fits right in with what it's talking about, and there are enough different types of enemies in this game that you don't ever feel like you're getting a lot of repeats. I say that as I just showed those that had a bunch of repeats. That just happened to be my bad shuffling as I set this up, but you can see some other here. And again, they have these various traps in there that can really mess you up. This one here, if you don't have flight, then you suddenly have to go back down to a previous floor, which can really mess you up. It's not as nasty as the one that is in the third level, which is an elevator, which suddenly shoves you up to the next floor, and you might be fighting something that is particularly nasty. And the last thing that I'll say about the obstacles that you're facing is the exit enemy. This exit enemy that you might be facing is nasty. It really does feel like you're going to have to work at it to get out. Every time that I've played, it's been maybe at the best a 50-50 that I would be able to beat the final alpha boss before I was killed. And 50-50 might be generous. So it does have a good challenge. Though, of course, you might wind up just running across a trap on the end and you can just kind of fly by it or whatever, which is a little anticlimactic, but I do think that adds a little bit of variety to the game, which makes you go back and look at what you're buying to make sure you get some of those utility cards. Maybe you need hacking and you can just pass that last trap, and you don't have to worry about something that's going to beat the tar out of you. So all in all of that is good. I like that. Now let's talk about my quibbles with the game. And then the last thing that I like about the game, and I'm using the word like because I don't love it, but I think it is good, I think it's solid, and I think it's thematic, and I think overall it's well done, is the art. I think this is pretty good art. I enjoy it. It's quality, and even the abilities and the things that you're finding, it does a pretty good job of illustrating what it is without being too crazy, too in-depth, which would clearly raise the price of the game for tons of art. And it does a good job, but it's not art on most of these cards that I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is just stunning, which you come across sometime. So the art's better than average. I just wouldn't call it great, but it certainly fits the theme and gives the flavor of this world. Now let's talk about my few quibbles with this game. And luckily I don't have that many. The first one is a completely personal thing. When I first opened this game up and looked at it, I was like, okay, if I'm a soldier, oh, I got 70 health. All right, that's what I'm talking about. That's some serious health. But it's not really, because everything is done damage in multiples of 10. You're not going to take 7 damage from something. You're going to take 10, 20, 30, 40. So really, I got 7 health. Just give me 7 health. Just make these things over here cost 4, cost 7. Because, again, the credits are in multiples of 10. And I get it. It's this idea of the future stuff costs more, but then again, they're credits, so maybe one credit is worth $1 billion. It doesn't really matter. And so that just kind of rankles me a little bit. And I understand the damage. It does sound better to be like, you're gonna take 30 damage if you don't kill this thing. Oh my god, 30 damage, that's a lot. Well, not really. So that's a quibble, that's a personal taste, and I suspect for many of you, you're probably thinking, Hungry, you're a jackass. No one cares. And that's fair. That's fair. My next quibble is, I think it's really challenging to get started in the game, depending on the identity that you are taking on. The first times that I played the Biogene, I was stocking up on these Biogene cards, which are pretty good cards, but I kept finding I was really struggling to kill things. I was able to do a lot of things that kept me alive. There's some good defense cards, but it just was very slow starting sometimes. And that just has to do with these cards, and perhaps I wasn't as skilled of a player and I was making poor choices. I certainly love to make poor choices when I game. And then the last thing that I'm going to throw out there, and it's probably not even fair to call it a quibble. I don't know that this game is doing that much that is new to the genre. Now, to be fair, this here, with the moving up and down, knowing that the next level of cards is going to be harder, that is not something that I have personally seen before. So perhaps that is new. Though the rest of it, it does feel very similar to so many other deck builders that are out there. Now, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, because all these other deck builders that I'm talking about that are out there, none of them have this theme. And many of them, the theme that they have is not as well realized. So if you like the Running Man movies, or you used to like playing Smash TV in the arcade if you're as old as I am, then this really could be your jam, and definitely is worth checking out. So who do I think would like this game? Well, first off, if you enjoy deck builders, there's a lot here. It's a good deck builder. The mechanics are tried, they're true, and it works. If you are someone that likes a more challenging deck builder, at least for a solo game, then this is a game for you. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. So all in all, I think this is a really strong entry into the deck building genre. Like I said, it's not reinventing the wheel here, or I guess the deck would have been better, whatever, but it is a very worthy entry. If you're a big fan of deck builders, definitely check this out when you are able to get access to it. As soon as it is available, I will put a link down in the description down there. And then the last thing that I'll say is there's a fair amount of stuff here. And there's actually more in the box. Like I said, there's plenty more cards for over there. But I do have to say that there is a lot of room for expansion here. More IDs, more abilities. I'm sure there is a world with a standalone expansion to where you're now going out of the quote-unquote game. I don't know. But there's a lot of room for growth here. And the core with which this is built, I think, is strong. If you're interested in this theme, check it out. Heck, if you just want to play a game where you can do cheesy one-liners like Arnold in The Running Man, here's your game. Anyhow, if you are familiar with this game and I made any mistakes in that demonstration of how it works at the very beginning, please do let me know and I will put that in the Klingon subtitles. If you have any other recommendations, again, put them in the comments and I'll do my best to make sure I consider them and do them if I possibly can. As always, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful, like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.